Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. Today I'm sitting down with Rashmi Aimiuwu, who recently moved from Canada to Silicon Valley, the literal epicenter of tech, and spent months wondering if she had any business being there. No engineering degree, no startup experience, just 17 years in commercial real estate marketing and a growing frustration with birthday parties. That frustration became Givva, a gift-giving platform that just launched in beta. And in this episode, she's pulling back the curtain on every step of getting there, from teaching herself to build a prototype with AI tools to firing her developer 2.5 months into an MVP and starting from scratch. Rashmi is the earliest stage founder I've ever had on Mimir, and that's exactly why I wanted her here. This show is for early stage founders, and I think her story mirrors yours more than almost anyone I've talked to. She is figuring it out in real time, building in a space she didn't come from without a roadmap. Honestly, I'm learning right alongside her, and I wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront because it shines a light on the parts that have to happen before you hit your big breaks. After listening, you'll walk away with how she validated the idea before writing a single line of code, what it felt like to jump into a business with zero technical background and sit with that imposter syndrome for months, and what she wishes she'd done differently with her name and brand from day one. It's one of those conversations that's going to hit differently depending on where you are in your journey, but if you're early, you need to listen to this one. Also going to go on Do Not Disturb because I just can't deal with the notifications.
Sweet. Awesome.
Rashmi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm really excited because I think your experience and where you're at right now is such a critical time. And I frankly just don't think that a lot of people talk about this experience or go back this far in the journey. And so I'm really looking forward to unpacking how you've gotten to where you are today and all of the learnings that you've had, because I think it's going to be incredibly valuable for anybody else who's either where you are or right before.
Mm-hmm.
So before we really get into it, I would love for you to just give a brief intro on your career and how you ended up starting a company.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. So my career, my formal work experience spans 17 years in the commercial real estate space. And so what that means is I led marketing, brand experience, and communication strategy for some of Canada's more prominent shopping centers and office workspaces. And my mandate there was to drive traffic to those properties that we owned and managed and get people to engage with their spaces. So in shopping centers, that was hey, come to the mall, spend an afternoon, eat at a restaurant, buy some stuff. Enjoy your time. And for the office portfolio that I worked for, it was more about getting tenants who were coming to the workspace every day to engage in the built form and their built environment. And so it wasn't just about coming to work, putting in your hours and going home, but really engaging in the neighborhoods and adding vibrancy to these beautiful neighborhoods in major Canadian markets. And so when I think about that sort of work experience, what I was really doing was working at the intersection of community experience and brand and creating sort of this really human experience that brought people together and made the sense of place and space meaningful and built that trust in brands and people and that interaction between them. And so it's really cool to reflect on my corporate career in that way. And, I call myself a marketer, but really I was studying human behavior and really trying to understand what motivated them to leave their homes, which is really hard to do in a digital age. So
Yeah. And I think it's so important to hear that because I know so many, non-technical founders or really any founder that's stepping into a space where they don't have any experience technically, I'm sure a lot of D2C founders don't spend 10 years in that industry that they're entering. And so I think it's really important to be able to reflect back and see the, quote unquote circuitous route that took you to get there. Cause I just think it's important to understand that all of our experiences are important. And I do think that it's the amor fati of it all where you can look back and be oh, of course, this makes so much sense as to why I'm here now. But at the time, of course, you're not worrying about that or thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, not at all. And so much so much of your work experience is transferable, even if it's completely unrelated. What's really funny is one of my sort of mandates in my last corporate job was what we called user experience, because we called our tenants users.
Cool.
And it's really funny because I was doing user experience in real life, and now I'm doing, user experience in the digital and technical world. The logic is the same. It's, you put yourself in the shoes of a customer and walk through the building or the product from their eyes and try to understand and improve that in every way you can. So
how did you get from corporate to entrepreneur?
So that's interesting. About 20 months ago, my family, my husband and my 2 kids and I moved from Canada to the Bay Area where we are today. Ooh. And in that move, we had decided as a family that I would take a little bit of a sabbatical from work just to help settle everyone and make sure we were all good. It was a big life change. And we agreed that sort of in that time, in that career break, I would also take that time to think about what my next move was going to be in my career, because I knew I wanted to continue working. And so I kind of grappled with everything. Do I find something in my space and continue my career path? But after 17 years and a small break and removing myself from the corporate world, I kind of was like, I don't think I want that anymore. I think I kind of want to do something different. And so I, toyed with the idea of maybe just doing consulting and owning my own client base and owning my own hours. And one night, my husband and I had a conversation about like, hey, you're in this really unique circumstance where you have an opportunity to take a big risk. And so why don't you think about starting your own business? And that sort of sparked something in me. I was like, yeah, that feels like in my bones, that feels like what I need to do, because I could always fall back on my work experience. I can always fall back on something else. And so that sort of laid a nice little safety net for me to be able to think about, okay, I'm going to start a business. Long story long, in my mom life, settling my kids, living my best stay-at-home mom life, I just started to observe the fact that I was getting frustrated with like gifts, managing gifts, managing unused gifts, figuring out what to buy people all the time. And I was just in the stage of life where that made up like the bulk of my social life. It was kids' birthday parties or teachers' gifts or this, that, or planning a birthday party. And because we've moved so much, I started to be very hyper aware of the amount of stuff that we accumulated at home. And I knew that that was a common thing where like our kids have so much stuff, they don't need more stuff, but we continue this cycle of birthday parties and gift giving and gift receiving. And I was like, oh, there's gotta be a better way. Like there's gotta be a better way. And so I started to think about it and like percolate on this idea of what if I take the human experience of gift giving and sort of flip it on its head a little bit. And through many months of percolating on this idea and having conversations, GIVA, or the very early stages of what GIVA is today, was born.
That's amazing. I think this is such a cool problem. My niece is 4, or my niece is 2, and my nephew is 4. And so I see a lot of this like firsthand from my brother and my sister-in-law. But I think like what is really interesting is how you went from, I feel like this is a problem, to realizing that it's a problem that should be solved. Because I think that's like an important nuance where there's a lot of problem spaces, but like the question of whether or not a product should exist within a space is like a totally different thing, where a lot of the times like people don't actually need you to solve that problem, or like it's a totally different problem. So like, how did you go through that process? Like, what did this percolating look like? Like, what did the research phase look like? Who are you talking to? How are you talking to them? How many days a week? That kind of a thing.
Yeah. So I think what's sort of a natural thing for me to do when I think about a problem, what was in work, is to peel it back a few layers to understand really what the problem is. And, there's this exercise of you ask yourself why 5 times, you'll get to the core of it. So I did that first, because I think whenever you're trying to solve a logistical or administrative problem, there's a million different solutions that exist out there today. It's not, most of the time you think about if I'm actually really adding value to the space. And so at first I spent some time thinking about like really peeling back what this is about. Is it about clutter? Is it about less waste? Is it about my kids have too much stuff and they don't need more? Are we just eliminating gifting? And so I sort of uncovered this idea or this notion. It's not my idea. It's just a social construct that gift giving is an act of love, and it's an important part of our like societal fabric and our cultural fabric as humans. And we give gifts to signal care for one another. And that's at the core of that act. And right now it's just become totally commoditized and convenience based. And like, how do we make this more efficient? And so with that sort of insight, I started to have conversations just within my own network, like 15 to 20 in-person coffee chats about like, hey, does this bug you like it bugs me? Like, is this just me where it's bugging me so much because, I'm not distracted by work and just trying to survive. Like I actually had time to think about it. And each time I had that in-person conversation, I listened not for, oh my God, that's such a good idea. But what I really observed was this sense of relief that someone felt like, oh my God, yeah, that would actually make my life better. Like, oh my God, that would actually make life so much easier. Oh my gosh, yes. Like it was that the breath that was within the yes that gave me that sort of instinct to say, okay, there's something there. There's something that's hitting a nerve with people to say like, what we're doing today is fine. Like we're living with it. It's, I haven't sort of pulled my hair out and been like, we can't go on like this type of problem. But when I suggest an alternative, I observed like palpable relief. And so I was like, okay, there's something there. So then I progressed to like widening the cast a little bit. And I sent out a survey with the aim of getting 100 responses. And I got just shy of that, just to, again, maybe extrapolate some patterns in behavior and sentiment around the act of gift giving, not the solution itself. And I uncovered some really important data there too, where interestingly enough, there's hosts, for example, that just kind of say no gifts, like your presence is enough. But the majority of people who received an invite like that would still show up with something, like they don't listen. And the reason that is because coming empty-handed to a celebration is deeply uncomfortable for people because they want to be able to sort of signal like, hey, I care about you. I'm here in presence, but like I also want to give you something. It's a very natural human response to a celebration or a milestone.
Yeah.
And the other thing that came out as a pattern in that survey was the majority of people indicated that gifts have to have a meaning. Like it's really, really important that what they're giving has meaning behind it or is meaningful or would be perceived as meaningful to the person receiving it. And then another behavior I sort of asked for was like, how do hosts manage this? Like, how do they deal with to gift or not to gift? Or am I going to ask for a gift or have a registry or just not? And it was this mixed bag of response that was so sort of this like socially awkward dancing around it. Like, I'm just not going to acknowledge it and let my guests come to me and ask questions. And then you're, texting back and forth. And it's this sort of polite, oh, your presence is enough. But if you want to bring my kids something, they like Lego or art or whatever. But it was just never really directly acknowledged, which left the burden on the gift giver to be like, okay, now I'm just going to have to guess and hope they don't already have it and whatever. And so these were the patterns that I sort of observed in the survey responses that I got, which sort of just validated that, okay, there's something here that's worth solving. It's not just this annoying thing, but like there's something here that could be fixed. And then from there, I dove into some more like official research online and found some stats on, again, social constructs around gifting and social behavior and the significance of it to us as humans, but then also gifting industry, and found some really important data there too that just validated that this was probably something worth pursuing.
Yeah. And something that I want to call out that I heard you mention, which I think is like I feel like it's a female founder thing where because we're emotionally in tune, I think we register empathetically, like how we relate to the problem. So when you said like you could feel the relief when you brought up an idea for an alternative, like I feel like that's such a uniquely female founder thing. Like a lot of the female founders I talk to always come from and approach their product development in such an empathetic way. And it's something I'm digging into because I think it's so fascinating, like the difference between the way men and women approach problems and the way that men and women approach starting a business. And I think there truly is like such an edge to that level of empathetic building because I think it's just like a different way to come into a space to validate and be like, I know that this is a problem because it physically manifests for people in like stress and discomfort. And then like to provide a solution, like it's so validating to see that like immediately that or the idea of a solution is wanted in that way. And I think that's such like truly, I believe it's a uniquely feminine power that we have to recognize problems in that way. And so I thought it was really cool to hear you explain that because it's been something I've been like noodling on in the background and hearing it across other female founder interviews. But I just like came to me and I feel like when you said it like that, I had to call it out because it's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to quantify an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
But I think when you build a product considering the human first or understanding sort of this like visceral reaction to a product or a business, that's where the stickiness lies. Like that's what's really going to get people to change their behavior. It's not a promotion or a discount code or a giant marketing campaign. Those things all help awareness and they're easier to quantify. But how do you say like, oh, I energetically felt relief in my 20 conversations and therefore I have but there's something so real and so substantive there. It's important, I think. It's important, especially when you're considering building a product that addresses like a human problem.
100%. And I think that other thing that you said too, where it's like, it's not like the difference between that and like how you market and like the difference between validation and awareness, I think is a really important distinction for people to understand because like it's definitely one comes before the other and it's a part of the iterative process.
Totally.
So how many conversations then, like after you sort of went through the initial pattern recognition and just like foundational work that comes to deciding whether or not it's like a viable product or like if there really is something there to then, like how many conversations did you have to really like feel confident that there was an idea? Because I feel like it's just important to pull the curtain back a little bit, especially for like people who are trying to get into this, that you're like, well, how long and how much does it take?
So I think if I were to quantify it, I probably had about 15, 25 conversations. I really pursued it as any chance I could get. I had it on a girls' trip with some of my best friends who are mostly all moms and even not parents because this gift giving problem extends beyond just kids' birthday parties. I'm only starting there, but just any conversation I could have, be like, I'm playing around with this idea, I'm toying with this idea right now. And I'm trying to discover if this is something that's a problem worth solving, like you said. So I had it at the dinner table. I invited moms on coffee chats and walks during the day and just said, hey, I'm playing with this idea. What do you think? Is this a problem for you? Are you frustrated by this process? And I just did that as many times as I could. And once I felt satisfied that it was pretty universal or I was getting a very similar reaction, I sort of stopped intentionally going to have those conversations, if you will. I still have them. Any chance I get, any parent I talk to, I still try to have that conversation to sort of continuously validate the idea. But I think when I set out to have the conversations initially, it was probably about 15 or 20.
Yeah. And I think the other important takeaway here is that like when I think just like by the nature of the experience of thinking about starting a business, like you're thinking about it all the time. And you want to talk about it with anybody and everybody that's going to listen. Like you don't ever want to shut up about it. And I think it's just because like you're passionate about it and you're curious. And like, so I want to also make a call out here that's like, it doesn't have to be like a stringent, like set process that you would think about it when like you have a corporate job, you have like a framework, you like do a thing a certain way, whereas with this, I think it's just like, to your point, something that you'll continuously do because it's at the forefront of your mind and you're like, ooh, you are a good person to ask this question to. Like, you're a good person to talk to about this. Like, I have thoughts, I have questions, it'll just come about like naturally.
Yeah. And I think it's just a natural part of, I mean, even if you are an employee in a workplace and you work on something customer facing, there's so much value in just talking to your would-be customers and just having those conversations. And without a framework, it's just really talking to them and understanding them and how they think and what they care about. It's really important.
Yeah. So then my next question is thinking about like, okay, so you validate the idea and then it's like, okay, how do we build it? Like, where do we go now? So like, what did that experience look like for you? And especially like, how did you decide that this was going to be like a technical product? Like, how did you think about this actual solution to the problem?
Yeah, I think this is again where my marketing background helped me, because whenever you sort of are trying to ideate a new tactic or a new plan or whatever, the first thing you do is do a competitive analysis and just see what's out there.
Mhm.
And so in my research, competitive analysis was just part of my process in understanding like what I'm up against and what's out there. And does this solution even exist out there? And I'm just not aware of it. And so by doing that and looking inside the industry and outside the industry and looking at adjacent sort of products, you naturally get inspired and absorb this information internally. And if you give yourself white space as a creative person, if you give yourself white space, all of those things sort of connect at some point. And so part of my process was just looking outside of myself and looking outside of my idea to understand what's out there and how the world is interacting with this gifting issue in the first place. And then as I started to come out of my imposter syndrome of being a non-technical person, and had this energy to sort of like tackle it first head on, I just started to research products that could help me, like no code or low code products that could help me build by myself. And so I started with Bubble, which is this no code app builder. And I spent so much time, the learning curve was so high. I spent so much time figuring out how to program a button. It was hilarious. And I think I got one page of my app done and it was so bad. And I was like, I'm going to take 5 years to build something that's presentable if I do this. But what that taught me, actually, again, every step that you take sort of feeds your process and makes you better and you learn something from it. And so from the bubble experience, what I learned was just actually how a technical product uses logic. And so it sort of helped me understand the logic behind programming the smallest thing, and padding and white space and actions and logic and what it has to do in the background for that one click to work. And so that helped me really understand that as a foundation of like building a technical product. And then from there, I discovered these AI tools that use natural language to build apps. So I landed on Lovable and just started vibe coding with Lovable to build a prototype.
Sorry, I was just going to interject really quick because I think I want to make sure that we talk about something that you said, which was like getting over the imposter syndrome of not being a technical programmer. I think I would love for you to dig into that a little bit more because I think this is such a key, necessary like prerequisite to your point, like just ripping the Band-Aid off and like diving in.
Yeah. So my imposter syndrome, I feel like was compounded because I am aware that I'm a non-technical person, but then I moved to like the mecca of tech.
Yeah, like,
And everyone has a big fancy degree and a big illustrious career at big tech firms. And I felt like I was surrounded by this. And I was like, oh my God, my little me, my like BCom from the University of Calgary, like, what am I even doing here? So that was really real. I sat with that for a long time where I felt like I wasn't worthy of pursuing a startup. And I felt a little bit cliche, like, oh my God, I came to the Bay Area and I'm doing a startup and I don't even have any to back this up. Like, what am I thinking? And that was just a very real thing I sat with for a few months. And I work with a coach. I've worked with a life coach for 2 years now, 2+ years. And she really helped me sort of work through that. Step by step, day by day. And that sounds cliche too, but it really was little tools like setting a timer for 5 minutes and saying, I'm going to research app building today for 5 minutes, just as a way to overcome that mental block that you get when you have imposter syndrome, just to get you acting, like just to do something, And I think everyone will tell you the best thing you can do is to just start. But for me, it was really broken down into the minutia of like, just start researching, like just Google app building tools, or just Google this today, or just look up this, or just go on one walk with a mom and have a chat. And so I was actively, without really knowing it, actively taking steps towards taking bigger and bigger actions. And what that did was it just builds up that confidence muscle to say, like, I can do this, or I can do hard things, or like I can overcome this. And it's hard, but it's definitely doable and you'll get there. I think and then to just iterate on that a little bit or reiterate that, it's a message I talk to my kids about all the time, like to build confidence in them is you might not be good at this sport yet, but we all had to learn how to walk. We all had to learn how to read. And we did that by just doing it a little bit every day. And we got better and better. And when you look back 6 months from now, you'll realize that you've actually come a long way. And so it was just very intentional, small steps that I took every day to get over that of imposter syndrome. And then one day I think I broke through it and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. I have the energy. I'm going to go. I know I'm going to stumble. I know I'm not going to get this all right, but I have like the guardrails around me to help me from, crashing on my face. And it's not really that bad. It's really not that bad once you get past it.
No, it's all learning. And like, I think what's important is that any of like the small, consistent actions that you take will compound. And I think like that's important from building a business perspective and then also from like a life perspective. And what those small, consistent actions look like are different for everybody. And like, to your point, I think depends on the problem. So like imposter syndrome, I love that tip of like just setting a 5-minute timer and just, like microdosing the hard thing on a consistent basis will eventually get you there. And I think like any small, consistent progress you take towards the business will compound. And the hardest thing I think about starting a business is like ensuring consistency. That's the only thing that takes people from, idea to thriving business. Like it's just about like putting the reps in every single day.
That's really all it is. It just comes down to that.
Yeah. And it seems overly simplistic. Cliches, I think, are cliche for a reason. I've been saying that for a long time. Like the older I get, the more I realize that they're like, right. They're right.
Yeah, they're totally right. I guess they were right.
So as you're dealing with like Lovable and learning about all this process, like when did you realize that you needed to like bring in a developer or like, have help?
Yeah, I think it's that quintessential problem of like, as a leader, you realize what your limitations are and then you just go seek out the subject matter expert. And so once I got to this point with my prototype in Lovable, I'm like, okay, I think I have something where I can show a technical person and it's sort of the bridge that helps us speak like a language that where we can understand each other. I got to that point and I was like, okay, I'm ready for someone to actually build something secure and legitimate and safe and sound and with good quality code in the back, and I can actually go and put it out there. So yeah, I just reached this point where I knew I'd kind of gotten it to a place where I had something I can go and talk to someone about it without taking an hour to explain myself or, so it really helped. That really helped me just be the bridge or the translator from me as founder and the person with the vision to take that to someone with the technical prowess to say like, hey, can you build this for me? This is what it needs to do. And this is how I want it to sort of like look and feel and a user to interact with. So it was really helpful.
Yeah. And I'm sure your marketing background helped a lot with this because I think a lot of marketing is a lot of like translating between what the product is and like how the market receives it. Like it's just a lot about like, translating features and stuff into just like outcomes and what you're going to get. And I think that I find it difficult to pull images and like creatively like stuff out of my head to put on paper. Like that I find challenging, but like words I'm good with. So I think that hearing you say like that it was just getting to a point where you were able then to like communicate your thoughts like articulately to another human being, like that was the crux.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then how was your experience like that? Like I'm sure a lot of people listening have never worked with developers before or had any of that experience.
Yeah, so that has been interesting too. The first developer I hired, I went in with the mindset of I'm not technical at all, so I need to fill this gap and find someone who is an expert technically. And that was sort of the criteria I went with hiring my first developer. And as we started to build and went through that process, we had a 3-month timeline to build out the MVP. And just through that process, I was starting to realize like, okay, this is hard, but not in a way that I felt like it needed to be.
Mm.
I think I sort of let the insecurity of me being non-technical drive my decision making a little bit. And so I would over rely on that person's expertise to say, okay, I want to build this. Can you just go build it? And then what I realized is I'm naturally a very collaborative person. And so I like to be close to process. I like to watch process. I like to riff off other people because I think ideas get richer
Mm.
getting different perspectives. And I just wasn't getting with that with this person. And so I was like chasing and like wondering what the update was. Like it was hard in that way where I'm like, what's happening? Like, and then we would have our touch bases and I would get the demo and it wouldn't be anything. Wasn't anything like what I was expecting to
Mm.
see based on the conversation a few days prior. And so it was starting to be like pulling teeth, and it was very difficult to sort of get an output that was meeting my vision. And I probably put that on myself a little bit more than I needed to in the way that I was like, oh, it's probably because I'm not technical and this is why. And so I was
Yeah.
overcorrecting and asking for more information. And then it dawned on me that it wasn't because I'm not technical that this isn't working. We're just not aligned. Like we just don't have similar working styles, and that's okay. And so I had to make the decision to exit that relationship and end the contract early and start from scratch. And so we were, 2.5 months in, nearly at MVP. And the insight was, or the realization was that I had given up too much of my vision to accommodate a timeline, essentially, right? I was like, oh, if we can just get to MVP, then I can fix everything later. And then as we were getting closer to the end, I was like, this isn't at all what I wanted the product to look and feel like. It just wasn't, I had given up too much of the initial vision in order to like just get to MVP or make this milestone. And so I decided to end that relationship early, and not because of incompetence or anything. This person was highly competent. It just wasn't, we weren't working well together. And so what that did was it gave me the clarity I needed the next time for the next developer I hired. I knew I had a better picture of the type of developer I wanted to hire, someone that had a little bit of business acumen as well and was curious and collaborative also by nature. And so we started again, like close to Christmas. I think it was December 19th. I restarted the process from scratch, and it's just been so much better. Like we understand each other. We understand each other's working style. It's very complementary to each other. I'm able to speak sort of in my big vision, strategic, customer, user focused way, and they're able to translate that behind the scenes and develop a product that reflects those sort of like brand values that I want Givva to reflect.
I think that's amazing. Like, I think that this stage of building is pressure testing so many elements around you as a person, like how you work, how you think, like how you operate as a person, like what are your insecurities, like all of that stuff is coming out to the surface in such a rapid form and
Mm-hmm.
requiring to deal with it immediately in order to progress to the next stage. And I think that's A, really cool. But B, like I've experienced this when it comes to business, like you find very quickly who you gel with and who you don't gel with. And I think to your point, like the more time that you spend trying to convince yourself that, you know, to not make the decision that needs to be made. Cause I think when you like really step back, you're like, okay, it's just not working. And that acceptance, like the longer that, or the more you prolong the acceptance, the worse off it's going to be. So I think like what I would caution from your experience, like other entrepreneurs, like trust yourself, recognize that what is going on like isn't working and be like, okay, whatever, it's just not working. Like we'll figure something else out. And then from your experience, like it's so much better. And you've learned so much about yourself through the process that you're like, it's rapid in the fact that you're not going to make the same mistake again, which I think is so great.
It's so great. And it actually enables you, not that faster is the only thing to value when you're building a new product or you have a startup, but it does allow you to go faster in that it's smoother, or that things that are issues don't have to be issues anymore. And you can just open up capacity to focus on other things, And so it's not necessarily the speed that you gain from it. It is speed too. It's a great cherry on top to be able to just go faster and fly the plane a little faster. But it's just, you can do it with ease and with more capacity to do other things, because this, like you said, at this stage, there's so many things that you have to focus on and work on and build from scratch. And there's no point in wasting time fighting a decision that you made when it would be sort of the path of least resistance to back out of that decision and make a new one in order to open yourself up for more in the future.
You can focus on the problems that are like related to the building of the thing.
Yeah.
That's like the actual thing, rather than problems surrounding the building of the thing. And I think that's just like,
you don't want that.
That's on to me like what slows down the process more than anything else. Like, sure, you're going to run into roadblocks around product development for the rest of time. But ironically, the problems that show up because of like people problems are like the most frictionful, I would say. So it's like deal with that shit quickly and like make the decision and then like focus on the real problems.
It's also the quickest way to kill your energy, right? Like dealing with people problems is so draining and so dreadful that like it's such an energy suck. And when you're in this critical time, when you're sort of founding or building a startup or your business is young, it's really that energy that sort of feeds that resilience and that persistence and that consistency and that like burning desire to just wake up and like work on the next thing and work on the next thing. And even if it's hard or complex, it's sort of that passion and that drive that feeds the persistence that's required to get started or to build a business that you own. And when you're bogged down in sort of this like people energy or a team member or a vendor that's not feeding the machine in a healthy way, I think it's so dangerous because it could kill your passion. Like it's that important of a decision to make that if you're dreading having the demo call with your developer because you're like, oh, I don't even want to have this conversation. That's so critical for your.
Yeah, time to make a switch, like not the vibe. It's eustress versus de-stress. Like if it's causing you de-stress, that's like an immediate red flag, needs to be dealt with immediately, versus eustress is like what we all, I think, secretly are in love with and like absolutely obsessed with the process.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm hearing so much. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the process of being a founder has brought so much to the surface about who you are as a person and allowed you to grow and flourish in such a different way. And it's part of the reason like why I love entrepreneurialism, but I would love to get your perspective on what you think this experience has brought for you and out of you.
I think what it's brought for me is this sort of confidence in my own instincts and my own sensibilities and my own strengths that I would never have been able to get to being an employee, within the constructs of corporate culture and corporate life and performance reviews and focusing on what you can get better at and all of these things. And, you can do a good job and you can love your job. And I've been fortunate enough to have loved my journey as an employee in a very traditional corporate culture. And I was surrounded by great people, but there's something about being a founder. It's just like, there's nothing like creating something of your own sort of ideation or passion and then building it and putting love and energy and effort into it and seeing it come out into the real world. And there's something really terrifying about that and vulnerable about that. But it's instilled this confidence in me where I feel like if you were to ask me if I would build a business again tomorrow, I would say 100,000% yes. Like, I'm not scared anymore. It just has eliminated that imposter syndrome fear that sort of blocks you from taking action. Like, that's gone. It's totally gone. And that's been very cool to experience this level of confidence in my own abilities and really honing this ability to trust my instincts and know that I have good instincts. And that's something that I think wasn't there before.
Yeah. And I love that you brought this up because as somebody who does both currently, like, I know what you're talking about. Like, my 9 to 5 is great. I work with amazing people. I have a great leader who's like truly committed to my growth in my career. And that's a rarity and a blessing. And I'm infinitely grateful for that. But I think to your point, like you're missing something. And it's why like I have to have both things at the same time because I need to learn what I'm learning, but at the same time, like it's a different level of growth. Like even to have people on your side and to be in a great working environment, there's something about pushing your own limits and seeing what you're personally capable of when no one is watching and like there is no real like reward other than like the gamble of if it's going to work. I think that is just another level of self-discipline and risk and like putting faith in yourself. Like it really is about like faith in yourself and then like that and proving it to yourself that to your point like brings out this next level sense of confidence, especially as a woman that like you can really do anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you can do anything if you just take it bite by bite, and I think that's one of the things that I reflect on a lot is, the scene from Legally Blonde where Elle Woods tells her ex-boyfriend she got into Harvard. She's like, what? Like it was hard, And she was like this energy. She was just like, yeah, I did this insanely difficult thing, but look, like it wasn't, I just did it. Like it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
And of course it's hard. Like I'm not minimizing the amount of effort.
She worked hard to get there. Like she did all the studying. She she was able to do all the things. And like, I'm so glad you brought up that movie because it's literally my whole personality. Like that is literally, she's my hero.
She is, but I think it's just that it's proof to anyone that like if you just have to put in the work and the effort and stay consistent, and it's so doable. And if you look back, you'll recognize that of course there were hard times, of course there's challenges, of course there's things where you have to sit in deep discomfort, but it's so doable. It really is. And there's nothing, there's no feeling like it to know that you did it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before we wrap up. Because you're so close to it, like looking back, if you could go back, like what would you set up to avoid headaches, or like what did you wish someone told you before getting into this?
Yeah, there's some like specific, really annoying things that if I'd just done it differently early on, it would have avoided a lot. One of them was you're picking a name. In one of my like bursts of energy when I was like, yeah, I'm just going to get started and open up a domain and get the thing. And I picked a name on impulse and it was bad, really bad.
What was it?
It was the Give and Gather Club. And it sounded like I was hosting Thanksgiving dinner for my friends. And then if you go into Target, I think their private label for their food is like Good and Gather. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like literally a box of Target pasta. This is horrible. But I had gone, I opened up an email address and bought a domain name and done all these things. And it was just a giant pain, behind the scenes to change that over. And then ultimately, when you're going to register your business with your state government and stuff, you do have to live with that legal name. And it's just a giant pain to change. And so I did go through the process of changing my name. But if I had just taken, an extra couple days to really think about, okay, this name is good, I can live with this as my legal name and my email address and my URL, it would just have eliminated so much. Like, oh God, this is so annoying that I have to do this because I picked a name impulsively and didn't do any research. So your name matters because it does set the foundation. You can change it always, but pick something at least you can live with in the early days so that you can just, again, focus on other things. And the other thing I'm glad I caught it earlier on, that I did catch it early on, but if I do it again, I would do it even earlier in the process, is just to establish a little bit of a visual identity. Again, it's things that you can change later and your brand identity and all of those things, but it sets the tone for when you're building product, and it makes that process so much smoother if you just have a little bit of a visual system established. And so I was trying to do it like, janky, scrappy founder style and building my own visual brand in Canva because I had that marketing background, but I'm not a designer, I'm a strategist. And so it wasn't great, but I'm like, this is workable. And then eventually I just hired a creative director to help me build out a little bit of a visual identity that we could go with. And the output is so much better and it just makes building the product that much smoother. So those two things, seemingly unimportant, but really important.
When I started like my podcast and everything, those two things, like I was really thoughtful about, like those two I spent a lot of time with, because like for me, the name, like I wanted it to have legacy, and I wanted to make sure that, like, to your point, like it was something I could stand behind. And like hearing about your experience reminds me of that episode from Friends when Phoebe realizes she can change her name and she thinks to change it to Princess Consuela Banana Hammock. And it was like this whole thing to her, it was like an impulse thing and didn't, anyway, that just reminded me of that. But like, yeah. And even the other stuff too, like when I thought about like what colors I wanted to use for the brand and like the meaning behind those colors and like what was that going to reflect, like, but like that's where I love to live. Like I love the aesthetic of it all. And I think like anybody who's seen me in person and like knows that right away just by like looking at me, whereas like I needed to learn more of like the strategic side of things, which is why I'm grateful for my 9-to-5 job. So like I think it's just about recognizing like where your strengths are. And then, to your point, like not everything about being an early stage founder has to be scrappy. Like sometimes you can just take the easy route and be like, I need help, you know?
Yeah. I'm a little bit of time and money into this part and be scrappy with the rest of it, because you have to be scrappy all the time. And sometimes just getting a little help along the way makes life easier. And it matters. I think I hear from just a lot of people I've talked to in the past, right? Like the brand you can always build later. You just make sure the product works first. And it's counterintuitive, as a marketer, to think that way, because I'm like, well, everything's brand. Like your color is your brand. The words that you put on your website is brand. The tactics that you execute are brand. Like it's all boils down to brand. And so it's insanely important. And sure, it's things that you can build in later, especially visual and cosmetic. But especially when you're building something that's public facing or consumer facing, it matters more than you think it does. And so they really are early decisions that you should be making and spending the time thinking about, because it informs so many decisions down the way that if you have it first, it really makes life easier down the road.
I think it's like ethos, like so much of who you are as a brand that is represented visually, like comes back to me. It's all like inextricably linked. Like it's not just marketing. Like marketing to me is everything. It's like all across the business. Like it's who we are. It's what our mission is. It's what our values are. And like that then gets distilled and translated into typography, into colors, into like truly like a fully visual identity. But
Yeah.
those, I agree with you completely. Like, as a marketer, I believe that it's like so deeply and even like when you think about developing products, what the chicken and egg is so real between like what marketing dictates the market says it wants and product development, and like what can we say that we do versus like how can we make that happen across the product. Like, it's all so inextricably linked that I totally agree with you. Like, those are key foundational elements.
Yeah. And they inform decisions that you make as you're building. Like, when you're building product, do we add this feature? Well, what's our brand about? Like, do we care about this thing? And can we actually put meaning behind it and substance behind this claim that we're going to put in our marketing campaign? If we can't, then, and if it doesn't matter to the brand, then we shouldn't do it. Or actually, this is so important to the customer and it is a part of our brand and DNA and it should be there. And then you have something to back that up when you put that in the marketing campaign. So they're lockstep. They're one and the same. Yeah.
Totally. Well, thank you, Rashmi. This has been so fun. I've actually like really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your expertise. I will have all the links to connect with you below, but if there's anything like, is the product live? Like, give us an update on where you're at.
Yeah, so the product is live in its beta form. We launched it about 4 weeks ago and we're officially in testing with real users. Yes, I'm so excited. There's so much work to do because this process uncovers a lot, which I'm really, really grateful for. But yeah, givaapp.com is where you can find the product and play around with it if anyone wants to. And I'm so grateful for you inviting me on your podcast, and I very much enjoyed this conversation.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can find all the links to connect with Rashmi in the show notes. Be sure to check out her app. It's in beta. Give it a test. I am super excited about it and I want to support her. We should all support her. If you feel called to support the podcast, please feel free to leave a review. It's always a really impactful way. And if you're looking for more, I would be deeply honored if you wanted to buy me a Mavtra. The link is below. And if you're looking for more from Mimir before the next episode, dive into the Well on Substack. There you'll find more founder wisdom and essays on entrepreneurship. But in the meantime, I will see you guys next week.